I grew up thinking that was like what women took on the responsibility of juggling all the things, right? And not really probably the best thing to really think about yourself, because I really actually think multitasking leads to inefficiency. It leads to your ability to not give your all to one thing. And it leads to overwhelm mostly and burnout. And so it makes you feel icky, right? It leads to anxiety. So I actually don't think multitasking is a good thing at all. And in fact, when I was always questioning whether it was a good thing. And when I started learning more about time management myself, I was like, oh, it really is not a good thing. And they actually scientifically have proven that it actually does create inefficiency when you try to multitask. I'm Jenny Finnell, CRNA and founder of CRNA School Prep Academy. I have always had a passion for helping those who aspire to become a CRNA. A couple of years ago, I started mentoring a handful of prospective students. Fast forward to today, and I have a successful mentoring program that has impacted hundreds of aspiring and now current nurse anesthesia students. What I enjoy the most in my business is connecting with you, the future CRNA. I love learning and growing with you. The road to CRNA is full of unique challenges, and no two journeys are the same. But every journey has a learning opportunity. I'm here to share what I have learned over the years from not just my students, but CRNA community leaders, program faculty, and from my time as a practicing CRNA. This will be your one-stop shop to get the mentoring you need to not only guide you into this career path, but support you all the way through to graduation day. So if you're a nursing student who's exploring the possibility, an ICU nurse actively pursuing CRNA, or a current nurse anesthesia student, you're in the right place. Tune in for inspiration and actionable takeaways that will help you from start to finish. Let's get started. Well, hello, future CRNA. Jenny Finnell here. Welcome back to another episode of the CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. Today, we're going to talk about managing your time in CRNA school. And we're going to kind of go over some strategies that you can start implementing into your routine now, so that by the time you get accepted to CRNA school, you kind of have a good game plan around how to do this. This is something that, holy smokes, I wish I would have had some guidance on prior to starting my program. I mean, I still managed, despite probably what I would consider not the best time management skills. But I think by kind of adapting a system, it's going to allow you to, keep on schedule, not procrastinate, and not let yourself get overwhelmed with everything that's up here. It allows you to kind of organize your time, essentially. So time management is a really key aspect of being successful in CRNA school. This is also something that, after talking to various programs across the country, that they agree that students need help with prior to starting their program, because a lot of students have never really had to juggle how busy they will then be in CRNA school. And from what I've heard from every single person, including myself, the way I felt is CRNA school is just a lot. It's a lot of information thrown at you at once. Not that the academics are hard, but it's a lot. It's just an obscene amount of information that you have to learn relatively quickly. So that's why everyone's like, oh my gosh, like it's like drinking from a fire hose. So how can you slow down that fire hose a little bit? Well, good time management and effective study techniques, which again, I teach in our nurse anesthesia resident boot camp. I also dive really deep into this topic, time management in the NAR boot camp. So if you're a CRNA School Prep Academy student, make sure when you gain acceptance to CRNA school that you are utilizing the nurse anesthesia resident boot camp prior to starting your program. We actually have several programs that are going to be looking to adapt this into their curriculum because that's how much it's needed. So you might as well, you have access to it as a CSPA student. If you are not a CSPA student, you can join to access the NAR bootcamp. I highly recommend that's the course of action you do. Plus, you're going to be able to take advantage of other things we do. Like we just did I'm not going to call it a pimping session because I don't like that term, but it's like a question and answer session. I'm trying to think when this episode is actually going to be going live. Let me look at my agenda real quick because it might be happening, just so I can be accurate when I tell you. Oh, darn, it just happened. Okay. But you can get the recording. So we just did a clinical question session and inside our academy where we actually And hopefully if you follow me, you'll see announcements. You can actually join in on this event. But we did a Q&A session, clinical Q&A session. So we hear the word term pimping in CRNA school, which is where people ask you clinical type questions when you're kind of in the middle of doing something else. And it just kind of puts you on the spot. It kind of makes you feel a lot of stress. It's kind of like being in a CRNA school interview where they're kind of like drilling you, asking these questions. And you're like, oh, this is testing my knowledge, right? And when it's done correctly, it's actually a very effective learning tool. And so over the years, it's kind of gotten a bad rap because you can do it kind of not so nice, meaning like you're kind of doing it more to kind of, just make someone feel inadequate. But if you do it correctly in a way that's more just engaging, let's just chat about it, and then it can actually be very beneficial and it really can help the student learn. So we just did a session like that. So ultimately what I'm saying is join CRNA School Prep Academy, not just to get the boot camp, but do other events that we do throughout the month. Because every month we do activities. We're actually going to be getting ready to start a clinical care plan building sessions where you can pick my brain. We're going to pick a topic, like we're going to do vascular, right? And then we'll cover vascular cases. And I have a care plan template that I've compiled from at least 4 different care plan templates and made the best of the best for you to start building your care plan library after picking a real CRNA's brain who has done these types of cases. So we're going to be doing that also this fall. So I really hope that you come in the academy to not just utilize the boot camp, but also take advantage of other things that we're doing. You can purchase the NAR boot camp outside of the academy, but it's $497, so it's a way better deal to essentially if you're going to pay for it over 5 months, which is when you register, it's dripped over 5 months, it's like $260. So it's a big savings. Also why I recommend joining the academy if you just want the boot camp. But again, we deep dive into time management, but I really think it's really key. Organization's a big part of it. And so you have to use a tool. Now, whether you like a paper and pen, calendar kind of thing, or whether you prefer digital. I was old school up until recently, and I really preferred pen and paper. And if you saw my desk, you would see tons of sticky notes and pieces of paper, which really is not efficient. It's really not an easy way to. What I found the biggest hindrance to using pen and paper is when I want to find something that I know I took notes on, I can't find it. It's like, what notepad is that in? What sticky note is that on? And if I really had all my sticky notes out, I'd have like a collage of sticky notes on my wall. Like it's just a little ridiculous, right? So, but if I had it virtually, most virtual systems now will allow you to search key terms, which will allow you to really quickly find your notes. So like even like your notes on your phone, again, you can search. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can search through your notes that way. So digital is really the way to go, even though if you're like me, it's kind of hard to break old habits. But I do encourage you to get kind of a blend of both. If you're not willing to give up the whole paper thing, I do encourage you to have a digital way that you track your time and stay organized. An organization tool that I use is Asana. Now, has way more than what you need. I mean, I use it for CRNA School Prep Academy Business, which is a very big production. One day I should probably take you guys on behind the scenes of CSBA. If you're interested, let me know. Leave it in the show notes if you want to know or show notes in the comments if you want me to do an episode on the behind the scenes of CRNA School Prep Academy, the business. But anyways, I use Asana and it's free. And you wouldn't need half of the stuff that's in there because you just need it for basic calendar functions. But it's nice. It allows you to color code things. It allows you to build out different projects and just allows you to. So if you're working with, tag your husband, like your husband can, or your spouse or your whoever, your friends, family can also get a free account. And then you can actually tag them and add them to your account so they get notified. Like if you're planning a date night, whatever, when exactly you can fit it into your schedule so you can tag your significant other, this is our date night, and then let them know so they can automatically see it. You can also just use your Google Calendar, Apple Calendar. That's perfectly fine too. You can actually sync and share calendars with your whoever you want to share it with. So that's also an option. The reason why I like Asana is because, again, it allows for a better visualization and planning on various tasks that I think you might need as far as organizing your school. But I do think for like a personal life kind of thing, I think sharing a calendar app like Google Calendar or Apple Calendar is kind of a nice way to go. And then just share it with whoever you want to share it with so you both are on the same page. So that's just my recommendation for being organized. Now, scheduling, I think you need to think about this ahead of time. And I know you're probably like, well, Jenny, I don't know my syllabus yet. It's okay. I want you to brainstorm and get an idea on the kind of time that you can set aside to tackle your schoolwork, right? So you have to really block off chunks of your day that you know for sure you can dedicate to school. And then also set a time for what I call the fundamental needs, your needs, whether that's physical needs, such as working out, meal prepping, so for health, just personal time, like for your to-do list, for example, family, kids, significant other, like I said, schedule a date night, hopefully you get to do it once a week. If not, then at least once a month. But just knowing ahead of time what your idea time frame is that you have every day is going to allow you, once you get your syllabus, to then start filling in those blocks. So you have to work out your schedule and get a handle on what you currently feel like you can do. So that way, when you do get your syllabus and your schedule, you can then start filling in the holes and where you have time to work. And it just allows you to be more organized with your time, and allows you to also set boundaries with your time. If you know you need a certain period of time for family or for personal time, make sure you build that into your schedule, right? Versus if you don't, you may neglect it or may forget about it or may just say, whatever, I'll just keep working. I'll keep doing my schoolwork. And then you end up over time suffer the consequences, right? So that's why I think scheduling and blocking out your time is really key. I do give a guide on how to do that inside the NAR boot camp. So it comes with like a workbook that you can fill out that kind of gives examples and kind of how to do that, and how to identify what these fundamental needs are for you. And I also share with you mine that I have identified anyways. And then there's such things as batching and being selective with what time of day you choose to do things. It makes the most sense to pick tasks that are similar. Like, for example, I know you probably if you've watched the podcast for the last 3 weeks, you've noticed I have the same shirt on. I promise I wash it. But that being said, I batch my podcast because it makes the most sense to do 3 podcasts in a row versus trying to do one every single week. Like if I did that, gosh forbid, I'd probably get a snotty nose and not be able to do it, or I'd have a busy week and forget, and you guys would only have intermittent podcasts from me because I like to stay a month ahead. And by batching, I do this with all my tasks for the most part. The things that I can batch, I do batch. It just makes it easier to stick with the same task. It just makes it more efficient and allows you to really get in that creative space where you can actually put all your time, energy, and focus into that. But that being said, I've planned for this. I didn't just like whip out a batch session, right? Like the night before, or even maybe a day or two before, I actually outline for the most part what I'm going to talk about. I have notes, like bullet points. I don't like go crazy with my outline. I just bullet points and then I just riff to you guys. 90% of my podcasts are really just me riffing off the top of my head. There's only a few that I've done where I've actually like legit planned and have like really outlined notes kind of thing. But yeah, so batching and then picking the time of day. Like I know for me, my hardest task or when I'm the most focused should really be in the first half of my day, meaning from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. is really when I should do the tasks that I need to be laser focused in doing, because I have the most attention at that point. Then I have lunch and I get sleepy and I need a nap. Oh, I don't take a nap. But that being said, my afternoon, I can still bring forth the energy. I know I can, but definitely by 3-4 o'clock, I struggle with difficult tasks. Like I'm like zoned out by then. So I do know at that point in the day, I have to typically align my tasks to be things that don't require a ton of focus, or just easier tasks. Like that's actually the time of day. Not to hopefully if you're a community member, you're like, oh geez, thanks Jenny, I get the worst of you. No, you get my best, but I tend to save like my community management for that. Meaning at the end of my day, I'll go in my and into the academy and I'll answer questions inside the community, or I'll save that task like when I'm, rocking our son to sleep or something like that. I don't know. So I try to save that task because for me, it doesn't feel super hard to do that task, just go answer questions and type it out. But if I'm actually trying to produce content, make content, that takes more brain power for me. So I just try to pick the time of day that works best to get my task done. And if you, again, are doing the NAR bootcamp, you'll see in the example I showed you about how I block out my time and how, for the most part, I'm pretty flexible. Now, I do still work at the hospital, so what you see from my schedule is obviously not going to be your schedule, but I just want to give you an idea. But typically once a week, I'll work at the hospital as a CRNA, so I'll have a big giant block of just work where I'm only at the hospital. But I actually prefer to kind of work in my workspaces at various times in the day. I have a big chunk in my middle of my day where I do most of my work. I take a break at lunch. But then first thing in the morning, I might answer emails, for example, where like at 6:30 in the morning, I answer emails. At 5:30 in the morning, if I can get up, I try to work out. But lately that hasn't been happening. Yeah, okay. But, so I have different periods of my schedule that I try to build my work around, and also personal time. Breaks. I think breaks are important. And I myself am guilty about neglecting this, but there is actually an app or technique called Pomodoro. And again, you can find apps that kind of help you with this. I personally need an app because I'm not good enough about remembering to do it without an app holding me accountable. But essentially it sets a timer where you work, for 25 minutes straight, and then you take a 5-minute break. And then you work for 25 minutes straight and you take a 5-minute break. The 5-minute break is like a breath of fresh air. It's just a breather. It's not really enough time to really do anything else. It's more like get a drink of water, go to the bathroom, grab a snack, think about what you're going to do next, and go back at it. Like it doesn't feel like a giant break, but it's enough to kind of give you like that mental space to get your creativity flowing again, and kind of give you a little bit of a mental like break from all the stimulation and thinking, because thinking takes a lot of energy and a lot of work. So the Pomodoro technique is a really great one. Also, what really helps is prioritization of your tasks. This is a must. Like this is one of the key things that you need to be doing in CRNA school, because like I said, you're going to have a lot of things on your plate on top of personal things. You really need to, I suggest having two different prioritization charts. You need to have a school one and a personal one. There is an Eisenhower matrix that you can follow. If you just Google these things, you can easily find them. But that's essentially the technique I teach in the NAR bootcamp, where it actually has 4 quadrants, and every quadrant has a different priority and urgency set to it. And essentially what happens is sometimes we neglect what's in quadrant 2 to where they become an urgent task, right? We think, okay, well, we need to do this, but we'll do this first. And then you can kind of get into this vicious cycle where then everything you do becomes urgent because you didn't plan for it well. And you always find yourself putting an important task off until it becomes urgent. And it's hard to break that vicious cycle. And that can really affect your ability to do your best work. I mean, if you're rushing to get something done, or you're rushing or cramming to study, you're not going to be nearly as effective as if you plan for it better and take a longer time to study something so it actually sticks, right? Cramming is not the way to study. You're not going to help yourself out on midterms or finals or boards. And so again, prioritization is really key, but you have to, in school, you're going to have to break up your personal life and your school life, because your school life is going to be so busy that it's going to be hard to like blend the both, because they're going to feel really overwhelming if you do. But what's really good about breaking them up into separate charts, and this should happen again every week. This is every week you need to be breaking up your tasks. So on top of having a set schedule where you block time off, every Sunday, you need to then prioritize your tasks for the week, right? Both personal and school. But what is good about breaking them up is it allows you to see, is there something in each category that, how urgent is this personal task versus how urgent is this schooling task? And how can I accomplish, maybe even do some of these at the same time? Like maybe I can study while I cook dinner. Maybe I can study while I run my child to baseball practice or something like that. So that way you don't feel like you're neglecting your schoolwork, but you also don't feel guilty for like not getting it done, right? So it allows you to be more creative is what I'm saying, by splitting up the charts and then trying to see if there's anything that you can maybe do 2 things at once. But that being said, make sure you're pairing that wisely, because multitasking, whether I know like historically I was like, oh, women are good at multitasking. I don't know where I've heard that or I believe that, but I just know I grew up thinking that was like what women took on the responsibility of juggling all the things, right? And not really probably the best thing to really think about yourself, because I really actually think multitasking leads to inefficiency. It leads to your ability to not give your all to one thing. And it leads to overwhelm mostly and burnout. And so it makes you feel icky, right? It leads to anxiety. So I actually don't think multitasking is a good thing at all. And in fact, when I was always questioning whether it was a good thing. And when I started learning more about time management myself, I was like, oh, it really is not a good thing. And they actually scientifically have proven that it actually does create inefficiency when you try to multitask. Because again, with the Pomodoro technique, like I said, you put all your focus for 25 minutes into one task. You're not like 5 minutes here in this task, 10 minutes here. Oh, wait, squirrel. I'm going to go do this and then I'm going to come back here. It just doesn't allow you to really give your all to any one thing, which kind of leaves you half finished in a lot of projects. So multitasking can actually be a bad thing, and it can affect your efficiency. So I suggest if you pick a task to do with something else, like what I used to do in school was I used to study at the gym, right? That was how I felt I was multitasking. But it worked really well because I didn't need a good mental, like to work out was more of a physical thing and to study was more of a mental thing, right? So I actually combined a mental thing with a physical thing, and it didn't feel like I was trying to do two mental things at once. It's when you try to combine, try to picture doing two physical tasks at once. It's not possible. So why are you trying to do two mental tasks at once? It's also not possible. So that's what I mean. If you're going to combine two different tasks, make sure one's physical and one's mental, not both mental, okay? Because again, you can't do two physical things at once, so you shouldn't be able to do two mental things at once. Also, you want to build out buffers into your schedule because inevitably things will come up, things will change, yada, yada, yada. You know how it goes. Like, oh, I didn't picture that happen. Well, now what do I do? And if you don't leave yourself any buffer time in your schedule, then it becomes kind of like the sense of urgency again. And so the buffers are really nice to just give yourself, and if nothing comes up, take the personal time, okay? Or maybe get ahead. Like if you feel like that's something you can do. There's nothing wrong with getting ahead, but there's also nothing wrong equally with taking some more personal time if you feel like you need it. So that's where the buffers can really work well in your schedule. Saying no. I know if you've listened to this podcast, you've probably heard me vent about my frustrations in school about always having to say no to things that I wanted to say yes to, like hanging out with my girlfriends or going here, doing that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, but I want to say yes. And it felt so hard to say no all the time. And it got me really upset at one point. I'm like, totally blew up. I totally, was like, I can't take this anymore. So saying no can be really hard, but it is really vital because you're in this for 3 years, okay? This is your priority. And you have, the best advice I can give is you have to try your best to explain to your friends, to your significant other, to your family, why you have to say no. And let them know what your schedule is so they know when you're more likely to say yes. Like that's my biggest piece of advice, to let them know, hey, not this weekend, but if you want to do something, I have blocked off the weekend of June 27th to do some fun things, like some personal things. So maybe we grab dinner that night, let them know when you are available, but instead of them reaching out sporadically on their schedule and then you always having to say no. It's more about communication and letting your friends and family know when you are available so they know the right times to ask. So they don't ask you at inappropriate times when you always have to say no. But the reality is you will have to say no more often than what you're used to being in CRNA school. And it can wear on your heart a little bit because it just, but you're doing this as temporary. When you're done with school, you can say yes all the time. Yes, 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 yes. And then you're like, oh, I have to say no again because now I'm too busy. So it's only temporary is what I can say. That the light, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. It will come. Your graduation day will come. And trust me, you will find all the things to fill that free time. At first, when you first graduate and take boards, you're going to be like, what do I do? I don't even know what to do. I'm just sitting here like, I guess I got to go find something to do with my free time. And then over time, you're like, well, now I don't have enough free time, So it's going to go, it's just over time, you kind of find ways to fill it. Trust me. Environment and community. This is something that maybe you guys haven't thought about. I know I sure as heck didn't, but it is so vital. And here's why. So your environment, A, can be conducive for learning or not conducive for learning. If it's really noisy, I know you can hear the dogs right now because they're barking. But if it's really noisy, distracting, even visual cues, like my laundry basket. If I see my laundry basket, I'm going to be like, squirrel, I got to go do fold laundry, or my clothes are dirty, or I don't know. Or if I just, my kitchen sometimes too is a bad place for me to be because when I get my kitchen and I'm overwhelmed with dishes and all the clutter and kids' toys are half chewed and mangled by the dogs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's anxiety provoking to be in my kitchen. So I often like to go in my little dungeon of a basement. This is where I do all my work. Because for the most part, it's the least stimulating place I have in my home. But you have to also find that environment for you in school. Sometimes it works best to just get out of the house, right? Sometimes I would go sit at Panera and study, or the library, or a Starbucks, or wherever you choose to get your studying done. Just find the right environment. Community is really huge because it's the accountability piece, right? And think about it. People pay for personal trainers. Why? they know how to go to the gym. Well, maybe they don't know all the techniques, but for the most part, any one person can go to the gym and do an exercise. They pay for a community, a personal trainer, for A, accountability, and B, strategizing. The community is a great way for you not only to be held accountable, but strategize on things you maybe not, I didn't know how to bend my leg that way or bend over or lift weights this way. Thank you. That's a new strategy for me to try to get the result I want. So community is essentially like paying for a personal trainer in school. So being a part of CRNA School Prep Academy, being part of the community, have a place to ask questions, connect with classmates, however you want to do it. I know a lot of classmates too will form their own Facebook group, private Facebook group. That's a great way to do it too. You just need to have a way to stay connected. And, I like the virtual classroom setting. I think it's convenient, especially for those who otherwise would have to commute a lot. But there's also a big downside is I think a lot of our students I'm seeing are losing that sense of community in school, and they're losing that accountability and the strategizing piece, and just the loneliness can set in. Like I talked to a student who is out of state where typically this program for the most part likes to keep its own, meaning that, it likes homegrown people because it wants to keep people around for jobs. And so they typically don't let in a lot of out-of-state students. But the few students who did get in from out of state kind of feel lonely because, for the most part, a lot of the classmates all have their little buddy-buddy system and they kind of feel like loners. And that's unfortunate. Like that's caused a lot of emotional stress and strain for this particular student. And so that's where I'm like, man, you really need some kind of support, and that comes in with community. You got to find someone to connect with, whether that's either classmate from out of state. You have to find a way to touch base with them frequently and often so you feel like you have someone there for you. And I get it. You're not going to always connect with all your classmates. Like it's just as human beings. Like you're going to have certain people you're going to connect with and certain people you're not. But, you have to try to find at least one person to be that support person that is also in school with you, because it's great if you have a supportive significant other. And I had that, but I still sometimes felt alone, even though I had someone to go home to and talk to. And I feel kind of really guilty saying this because it's like, my husband's amazing. Like he was always just so supportive and there for me. But truly, sometimes I felt like I needed to talk to someone who actually was experiencing what I was experiencing. I don't know why. I don't know how to really explain it other than the fact that it just felt more reassuring that I had someone else who was like, oh my gosh, Jenny, let me tell you this, because I totally resonate with what you just said. And this is how I feel right now. And you're like, oh, like you just spoke my mind. And there's just something about having someone else who is going through the same thing to connect with can really make a big difference in your mental health. So that's kind of what I experienced. I'm sure a lot of you maybe feel the same way or will feel the same way going forward. And I, again, don't really know how to explain it, but your classmates can really be a huge support during school. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This kind of wraps up time management in school. I am excited for you. I'm rooting for you. And again, if you are a CSPA student, please utilize the Nurse Anesthesia Resident Bootcamp. You have access to it. It's just a great way to kind of get a head start on your CRNA journey. Again, we have, just to kind of cover what we cover in the bootcamp, we kind of starts off with an intro to anesthesia history, which again, you're frequently tested on and expected to know when you start your program. Intro to anesthesia concepts. So we kind of cover like the basics of anesthesia, different equipment and, the machine mechanics and things like that, like basic. Like we just kind of expose you to what you need to know in anesthesia school. So when you start your programs, you're going to kind of have the foundations to kind of build upon. So it's not going to all seem completely foreign to you. And you'll have an understanding of why we use certain things in anesthesia. We also do an intro to anesthesia chemistry. I just recently had a student ask me if he needs to know the Krebs cycle. I'm like, I think it's for biochem, but no, you don't have to know the Krebs cycle for CRNA school. So that's what I mean. So we teach you chemistry that you actually have to know for CRNA school. And and he's doing the same thing. He's binge watching, I don't know if it's Khan Academy or whatever one does all the chemistry, but it's just unnecessary. Like just do the boot camp. I promise you, we have covered what you need to know in the boot camp. Like you don't need to do anything else. So the beauty of our boot camp is if you're going to watch every Khan Academy video, stop right now and enjoy your free time and just go utilize the chemistry course, which will only take you a little over an hour to do. And you're going to be golden. Like that's all you have to know to build the foundation for CRNA school. So save yourself the time and frustration. Same thing with physics. We teach you physics that you need to know for anesthesia. It's a very, very narrow range of concepts in physics that you have to understand. So we teach you the physics. We also do introduction, a 2-part series actually on Intro to Pharmacology. We did a 2-part series because this one's actually probably at the bulk of, we do a lot of pharmacology in anesthesia school. As you can imagine, we push drugs all day. So we do a 2-part series on pharmacology. Same thing, like we don't want you to go out and read every textbook and try to memorize every drug. We just teach you it is what you have to know for anesthesia school and give you a good foundation to build upon. We also do an introductory writing course. So we call it scholarly writing, because now you're writing DMP papers, and some of you may be like, how in the world do I do this? How APA, like all this stuff. So we kind of run through a writing course with you. We also do an anesthesia math course because like I just had a student recently who was like, man, on my interview, they asked me, how to convert a milligrams per ml to mics per ml, and I totally blanked. And it's not a hard conversion at all. It's just moving decimal places over. But it's one of those things where if you're not familiar to do it kind of quickly, it can be kind of scary. Like, how do I do this? And so we break down anesthesia math for you. It's really not hard. A lot of people think you have to be a math whiz to be a CRNA. It's not true. Like, it's pretty basic elementary math that you have to do. Like, it's ratios, percentages. Yeah. And math was not my strong suit. I like math, but I always struggled with it. And I do just fine. And I also have mild dyslexia, and I still do just fine. I just know to 100 million times to triple check myself on my numbers. And then honestly, the more you do it, the more familiar you get, the easier it gets. We also teach study techniques and time management, as I just shared with you guys. We teach mental wellness. This is huge. I know I just in the last episode I covered kind of how to deal with anxiety. We really deep dive into mental wellness because I think if you neglect this, so many people, the problem with mental wellness, and I even spoke to current students who I mentor or I do clinicals with, I was like, students don't know they need help until they need help. Like, it's like, oh, I'm good, I got this, and then they get into school and they're like, what do I do? So trust me and just embrace the mental wellness aspect now prior to starting school. You will thank yourself later, I promise. We also get into grit and kind of how to endure, like I've kind of spoke to a little bit in the last podcast as well. We cover preoperative assessment really thoroughly, induction of anesthesia, maintenance of anesthesia, emergence of anesthesia, and clinical tips for success. So again, make sure you do the Nurse Anesthesia Resident Boot Camp. It's already part of your membership. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week. Bye. Hey, future CRNA. As always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.